Hello and welcome to Talking Aussie Books, a weekly podcast bringing readers and writers of Australian fiction together. I'm Claudine Tinellis. As an avid reader and passionate advocate for Australian fiction, I make it my mission to spotlight local talent. So if you're looking for your next read or simply want to learn more about the Australian literary scene, this podcast is for you. Grab yourself a cuppa, sit back and relax. There's nothing more satisfying for me than to have the opportunity to interview an author I've been in the trenches with. Someone I've sat alongside and dreamed of the day we would be published. Someone I've commiserated the rejections with and also celebrated the wins. Today, that writer is Kylie Orr. Kylie is a Melbourne-based writer whom I first met 5 years ago. Hard to believe it's been that long, really. We were both attending the autumn 2017 session of the renowned Fiona McIntosh Commercial Fiction Masterclass in Adelaide, one of 20 people who came together that week in pursuit of a common goal. It was an intense and challenging week that propelled us down a rocky path towards publication, which in Kylie's case ended when her debut novel, Someone Else's Child, was released by HQ Fiction last week. Kylie's dry sense of humour and self-effacing nature is what draws people to her and her writing. If you follow her on Instagram, you'll know what I mean. And if you don't, I ask, what are you waiting for? Someone Else's Child was a gripping and at times confronting novel that drew me in immediately and didn't let go until the very last page. Kylie is a wonderful new voice on the Australian literary scene, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome her to the podcast this morning. Hi, Kylie.
Oh, hi. That's going to make me cry. That was a beautiful intro. I'll send you the money in the mail. That was great.
That would be the
first. That was lovely. Thank you. So nice to be here.
It's my pleasure to have you. I'm so excited. And I know I've said it before, but I'll say it again officially for the record. Congratulations on your well-deserved success. It's been a long road, hasn't it?
Oh, it's been a super long road. 7 years, in fact, from first idea to book on the shelf.
So Kylie, take us through those post-masterclass years. Unlike me, who went on to write another 3 full manuscripts afterwards, you focused your attentions on honing this particular manuscript, didn't you?
I did. I went to Fiona's masterclass actually on scholarship. She chose this book to give the scholarship to, which was just what I needed because I kept hitting obstacles and did not know how to fix it. And so it gave me that sort of crumb to keep going. And so when I got home from the masterclass, I was determined to write this book to the end. And I knew where I had to take it then. However, my father was very sick at the time. He was dying of cancer. And so I got home from Fiona's masterclass. I think he died 3 weeks later. It was, and I had no emotional energy at all to put into the book. So I didn't look at it for quite a while. I think it was probably 3 months before I picked it up again. But I was absolutely determined that I needed to write this book to the end, and then I would go back and fix it once I knew what the full story was, once I understood who the characters were. So yeah, it was a long process.
Yeah. So Kylie, what was it about this particular story? Why was it important for you to persist with it?
I just thought it had a really good hook, and it was an interesting original take on GoFundMes, which are such an important part of our giving, donating culture now. And, you know, with the rise of the internet, etc., you have much wider reach for fundraising efforts. And I live in a small community, and we often do fundraising things just locally, obviously. And I started to think, what would happen if you donated money to a cause and then the people didn't spend it where they said they would? So it was sort of exploring the ethics of donating, but also just the country. I don't live in a country town. I live in about an hour outside of Melbourne in the Yarra Valley, but we do have a very tight-knit community. So it was sort of more around the ethics of giving and being part of a community, but also really wanted to explore motherhood and how we judge mothers. And the mother in this story, Anna, is obviously dealing with a very sick child. And I really am interested in female friendships. I think females do friendships quite differently to men. I think they're complicated and layered, which, sorry, blokes. I think the blokes are a little bit, not that they don't have deep connections, but they seem a bit simpler in their approach, whereas women are very complicated. And I wanted to explore the idea of Ren, who is Anna's best friend, who has no children, and she's trying to be as supportive as she can and not judge Anna in the way she's behaving, because Anna has a very sick child. And it's sort of about where you draw the line when it's not your child, when it's someone else's child. So there was quite a few themes in there that I wanted to explore.
Indeed. So was there a particular spark of inspiration? I mean, obviously you've just explained, the various themes and the things that, you kind of put into this book, but was there something in particular that set you down the path of writing Ren and Anna's story?
Yeah, look, I had read a couple of stories about GoFundMes where people had been, say, raising money for a sick family member, and then they spent the money on a holiday. And I just found that so intriguing. Like, does it matter if the person's sick and that's the best way they find that they can spend the money for their family unit or whatever? I was not worried about that at all, but a lot of people seem to get up in arms about that. And we know from the Celeste Barber situation when she was raising money for the fires, that was just a really well-intentioned fundraiser. She just wanted to help people who were affected by fires, and it was a really traumatic time. And obviously the donations completely blew out. And then it became a court case because the transparency about where people and what they were donating to was not so clear.
For those who haven't read the story yet, Kylie, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure. It's the story of Charlotte, who's 8 years old, and she has been diagnosed with a terminal brain tumour, and there is no real treatment or cure. The only possibility is a European drug trial, but it's at a cost of $100,000 plus expenses to live in Germany for the duration of the treatment. So her parents, Anna and Jez, set about trying to raise the funds. Jez wants to sell the house. Anna has a background in public relations, so she's keen for it to be a fundraising event, and she's confident they'll be able to raise the money. And her best friend, Ren, is keen to support them any way she can. She's very invested in the family. And really, it's actually Ren's story. And it took me a while to figure out it was Ren's story. I originally wrote it from 3 points of view. So I'd written it from Anna's, Ren's, and Charlotte's. But when I sent it to an editor for a structural report, she gave me the feedback that it wasn't really working in the three voices, and she thought I had nailed Ren's voice. And so I set about rewriting the entire thing from Ren's point of view, which was traumatic and exhausting, and I'm sure I swore at the screen many times, probably punched the keyboard, threatened to give up writing forever. But I think it's a better story. And even though it was a super long process to do that, it taught me to understand my characters before I set out to write. And so I understood Anna better. I understood Charlotte better. And then I really knew it was Ren's story.
As I said to you before we started recording, I found Ren to be a particularly intriguing character. I think she was incredibly loyal and preferred to see the best in people. I don't think she could have worked in the job that she had organising respite for caregivers in the community if she didn't. But I wanted to ask you, Kylie, do you think that her loyalty and caring nature made her an easy target?
I think the short answer is yes. And I think what I've tried to do in this book is show people how much you can be blinded, I guess. I think readers will understand once they've read that the reader will probably guess what's happening before Ren has. And that was an absolute deliberate choice by me, because what I was trying to demonstrate is sometimes from the outside we can see things and we look at situations and think, how the hell did you not see that coming? Like, what is wrong with you? But when you are in it, you can't see it. Really, that is Ren. That is Ren's whole circumstance. These are her best friends, and she treats Charlotte, Lottie, like she's her own daughter. So she doesn't want to see the truth. She doesn't want to see the darkness in her friend. She wants to believe and support in any way she can. And also she doesn't think it's her place to be questioning treatment options or where they choose to spend the money until obviously things hit the skids.
Yeah. I want to explore that just a little bit later, but I wanted to know about, you said earlier that female friendships was something that you wanted to explore in this book. And I think in this case, it's a toxic friendship. I think you explore this with a great deal of finesse. I don't even think that Ren is aware of what is happening within the context of that relationship. Was this something you consciously wanted to deal with?
I don't know if I set out to do that. I think it's just where it ended up. I think I have observed friendships from afar and think, what is going on there? There's a real serious power imbalance. I've also been in friendships where I didn't see the toxicity, I guess. And, I actually have a friend who helped me with the legal side of this book. And she once said to me, "You are friends with people whose resumes would not even hit my desk." And I think I am, in a way, I'm a little bit like Ren in that I see the good in people until they give me reason not to. Sometimes there are flags and you explain them away. So you say, no, they're having a bad day, or I think they're just going through a bit of a rough time, or they're not great at whatever, confrontation. I think we all have a little bit of that in us. And I think it's really easy to judge from the outside. But I have been burnt by friendships that I was loyal to and probably stupid until I got to a point that became a breaking point. And I think sometimes friendships are harder than like romantic relationships because I don't know, I feel like you can have quite honest conversations with your partner, but you're scared to lose friendships. So you don't want to upset people. And look, I am not, as you know me well, I am a straight shooter, but I'm also an overthinker. And I don't like to upset people. And I will lie awake at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking about something I've said to someone, thinking, oh God, I hope that didn't upset them. And then sometimes I'll send them a text message the next day and they have not even had a second thought about it. So probably I'm quite a complex character in real life. And maybe Ren is not like me. She's an amalgamation of many people I know. But, she is the bleeding heart of the country town who, and I guess in a way she's a little bit in awe of Anna. Anna's the slick city chick that came and chose to live in their country town. And, she dresses beautifully. She's so well groomed. She's so well put together. She's articulate. She's ambitious. And Ren, feels like this dowdy country gal who just kind of loves everyone. Is that the sense you got of Ren?
Absolutely. But I also think that she had so much more to give than she gave herself credit for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think as Ren goes on in life that she has learnt from this friendship to value herself a little bit more and step up. And look, that might frustrate some readers. I'm sure there will be readers who read this and think, oh, for God's sake, Ren, grow some balls. But, persist, because she does grow some balls in the end. I probably shouldn't even use that term because, the patriarchy and all that'll set me off.
Well, I think we all know what you mean, right?
Yes, to find her voice, for Ren to find her voice.
As you mentioned earlier, motherhood is also a big theme in this book. You're a mother of 4, I'm a mother of 3, and I think we understand that society places a great deal of pressure on women to be a certain type of mother. And whilst I'm certainly not suggesting that what we witnessed in this story was an example of good mothering, I find it almost impossible to see where anyone outside of the family in this story could have stepped in any earlier to question the decisions that Anna was making in respect of her own child. Mothering or parenting is hard enough without people constantly questioning your actions or decisions. Tell me about this, and why was this something you wanted to explore?
Oh, I think every mother can relate to feeling judged. I was particularly stressed when I had my first child. He's now 18. I remember when he would have a tantrum in a supermarket, and I would just think, everyone's watching me and how I deal with this. And if I'm too hard on him, then people are going to judge. And if I'm that soft parent who bobs down to their level and tries to calm them down, then, people will be judging that too. I was constantly in this circle of trying to do the right thing, but by who? So by the time I got to my 4th child, she's lucky we remember her name. I don't care anymore. Not that I don't care about my parenting, I don't care about other people's opinions of it. But in those early days, you feel judged. Well, I did. I feel like a lot of mothers feel like that. Some maybe take it on board less. But, you've got it coming from every side. And my mum used to say parenting is a young person's game. And I think maybe that's right, that the older you are when you parent, the more life you have lived, but the more thinking you do about it, perhaps. I'm not saying that young parents don't think about it. I just think maybe they're a bit more instinctive about it, but we've read too many books. I used to write for a parenting website. And so my whole life was thinking about what's my latest drama, what's my latest story. And, the well-being of your children weighs very heavily on you as a mother. And so I would imagine having a sick child like Anna does, the way you behave is going to be notched up 10 levels. I mean, if we think about, Lindy Chamberlain, and when Cleo Smith went missing and her parents were interviewed, I remember Twitter just, lighting up with everyone's analysis of the body language, particularly of the mother. I was like, this is awful. Like, how do you know how you would respond if your child was abducted? I think we are constantly judged. There's an image of a mother and a woman that if we don't quite fit, then there is a lot of commentary about that. And I don't think men are under the same kind of scrutiny. So I did want to explore that a little bit for Anna and have Ren very aware of that. And also because Ren doesn't have a child. So she's got the extra layer of, well, what would I know? Even though she does know.
It's hard to talk about the central issue of this book without giving spoilers, but suffice it to say it's awfully dark, something that's quite difficult to imagine. But what I wanted to delve into a little with you is the idea that one parent is responsible for a child's well-being. Jez took a back seat in terms of Lottie's treatment, didn't he?
He did. That's a good question. Yes.
I think there are practical considerations to take into account. Someone still has to work to pay the bills, and in Jez's case, work close to home wasn't easy to come by. So I understand the practicalities of their life, but I can't help but think that Jez was a little responsible too. He kind of left everything up to his wife.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Anna is a very strong character. So perhaps because he was away and out of the picture, he felt guilty about that. And she was gung-ho, like she is a strong personality and she was leading the way. So he was following. I don't know that Anna would have given him much space to make decisions. And I know from my own circumstance, my husband works from home and he has been around and very involved in our kids' lives, since they were young. But ultimately, he runs his own business and he works full time. So I was the one managing life admin, if there were school issues. And also we approach things very differently. So something that I would see as an issue for my child, my husband would be like, no, they'll be right. And, so we just have different approach. And I think Anna was, she basically was the stay-at-home mum for an only child who ended up being sick. So it's a very intense time. And Jez was not there during the week. So she was managing the appointments. She was managing the treatment options. She was managing finding cures and the rest. So I don't know how he walks into that situation and says, right, they were not a partnership, as it turns out.
And then, of course, looking at it from another point of view, we have the heartbreaking case of single teenage mother Courtney and her young disabled son Kynan. That was a particularly heartbreaking situation, but it also made me reflect on the idea of women somehow always being left with the responsibility of caring for children.
Yes. I mean, we could really enter into some very controversial topics here.
Indeed, we could.
The abortion debate in America. When it's your body, I mean, you should have a choice about what happens there. And yeah, women generally are left to fend. And, imagine they exist, women who leave their families, but they're rare. And boy, are they looked upon poorly, aren't they? How many men do have nothing to do with their kids, or is separated, or just never stuck around for the baby? And it's sort of just accepted in life and culture that, oh, well, that's part of it. But we don't have those options. So yes, Courtney was the reason I threaded Courtney into the narrative is really another layer for Ren, because she has a job that you can't leave at work. And so even though there were flags along the way in her friendship with Anna, she had a lot going on. She had a lot of issues clouding her mind. So it was, firstly, she doesn't want to see the flags. And secondly, she didn't have the headspace for the flags. So, yeah. And also she was in a position where she didn't have a lot of power to help Courtney. So she wasn't her case manager. She was the respite coordinator, trying to get her a 1-hour yoga class here and there. And that is not even touching the sides, is it, of someone who's doing round-the-clock care and so young with no family support. Yeah. And, I hear often reports of country towns not having the same resources that cities have. And, it's really hard. Anyone on the NDIS will tell you that you're begging for help and support. So I think Courtney was very abandoned, and Ren feels great guilt about that.
Kylie, did you have to do any research to bring this story to the page?
I did, but if I tell you what it is, it'll give it away. I read a lot of GoFundMe stories, and I just kind of looked into the way people structure their fundraisers to get the most money and pull the heartstrings and those type of things. I did do some research on drug trials and how they work and what they cost. I did a fair bit of medical research, which is really not my area. Thankfully, I have a sister-in-law who's a GP, so she got lots of, would this happen? Would this happen? What would happen if that was in their blood tests? I can't really tell you the other research.
Yeah, I know. As I said, it's pretty hard to talk about the central issue in this book without giving away spoilers. Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you live on the outskirts of Melbourne, but this story had a small town setting. Now, was this deliberate, and did you have any particular place in mind when you started writing this novel?
Look, for some reason, I set it in New South Wales. I have no idea why. I live in Victoria. And when it went through edits, I think it was because it was cold in Victoria and I just wanted it to be a bit warmer where I was writing the story. It's a fictional town, but when it went through a structural edit, one of the editors said, I don't really have a sense of what this town is like. So I had to do a bit more research. I ended up choosing towns that I've never been to, Claudine, but looking at their main street and looking at their population and thinking, this is where, Gibbs Creek, this is the idea for Gibbs Creek.
I think I remember when you were going through that process. Yeah, maybe? I think you were saying something like Port Macquarie.
Yeah. And I've never been. So I don't know what the hell I was thinking, let's be honest. I just wanted somewhere warmer and nicer. But now I'll have to go there, won't I?
Absolutely.
So I do mention Sydney. So even though the country town is fictional, the actual city, obviously, of Sydney, but that was just trying to place people to give them a sense of, size. And I did say that there's around 70,000 people in and around Gibbs Creek. So
Kylie, I've already mentioned the circumstances in which we met, and at the time you just signed a deal for publication of your set of children's books with a Canadian publisher, if I'm not mistaken. Whose Pants, Whose Shoes, Whose Bag, Whose Hat. Beautiful books that I was lucky to get my hands on for my nephews at the time.
Oh.
What, if anything, would you say did you learn about your first publishing experience?
That I signed a really crap deal. I got 3% of net profits for those books. I learned that the industry is tricky to navigate and that it's I actually had no local buyers for those children's books. So they went to Canada and sold out in Canada. But they were unable to garner the interest of anyone to stock them locally, which I was so green. I didn't understand that. I thought if you signed a book deal, that meant your books go into shops. That's not the way it works. Buyers have to buy it in. And at the time, the big four, your Target, your Kmart, Big W, that they weren't doing that well. And so they were only buying in books mainly of authors that were well known, that they knew they could sell. And I was just a little unknown author. So I ended up buying my own print run, which was weird because I was sort of straddling traditional publishing and ultimately distributing them myself. So I had to do the cold calling on stores. But in a way, it was great because I met local booksellers and I got over that awkward part of walking in and saying, hi, I'm a local author. Can you please stock my book? And now I have a really good relationship with my local bookseller. In fact, she came to my launch on the weekend and sold books to people there. And so it taught me a lot about the industry, I guess. Children's picture books are a really competitive part of the market. All parts of the market are competitive. But, also I was really interested in sinking my teeth into bigger themes. But I do love those little board books and I love hearing about kids who love them. I mean, that's kind of why you write, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Are they still available?
No, there's no stock left. Or there might be a couple scattered around different shops, but I don't have any stock left anymore. Yeah. That chapter is now closed, Claudine. I will not be ordering any more.
Well, I'm so lucky that I have access to a set.
You do. I think there's a little shop down in a seaside town called Apollo Bay that might still have stock. I holiday there every Easter, and I went and had a look when I was there last Easter. I'm like, oh God, she's still got like 10 copies. Yeah. So yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, look, knowing as I do the blood, sweat, and tears that went into this book, I wondered, Kylie, if you had any tips to offer aspiring authors out there.
Yeah, of course I do. I would say keep going right to the end. Don't try to go and polish the start of the book when you haven't even finished the end of the book, because you don't know how it's going to end. So unless you're a super planner, which I am not, write the whole thing all the way to the end, even if it's crap. Just write it, because then you've got something to fix. I would also say once you get it polished, enter competitions. Honestly, it gives you a deadline, it gives you some structure, and you never know who might read it. So I entered this. It was originally called The Fundraiser. I entered it into the Victorian Premier Literary Awards for unpublished manuscripts, and it did not get longlisted or shortlisted, but I got an email asking if one of the judges could contact me, and that judge was JP Pomare. And he sent me a very kind email that said, I just want to know that even though this did not get shortlisted, it has legs. Keep going. Oh my God. I mean, that small, tiny crumb of encouragement is enough to go, okay, this is actually not a pile of crap. Maybe we can make something of this.
Yeah.
And then I entered it into the Ritchell Prize. And I just want to say that I did double check that is the pronunciation. Lots of people love to say Rochelle, but it is their surname. And I even checked with Hannah on Twitter. Does it rhyme with Mitchell or Michelle? And she said Mitchell. So I feel like, yes, it is the Ritchell Prize. Anyway, it was longlisted in that, which I did not even know about until one of our Fiona McIntosh masterclasses rang me screaming on the phone to tell me, oh my God, you've been longlisted. So I came in and had a little cry, because I thought, okay, like maybe there is a chance for this book. And that is the very thing that got me an agent. So I didn't even make the shortlist, and I got an agent out of that. So you don't know who's reading it. And there is a publishing newsletter that goes around called Books and Publishing. And I would imagine most people in the publishing industry subscribe to that newsletter, and they list anyone who's been longlisted. And so you just never know who's reading it. And I think it's worth putting yourself out there. And I work much better to deadlines. So it's good for me to have some structure. If it's just open-ended, then I'd never get the thing finished.
Kylie, I wanted to know how important to your writing and process is being part of a writing community. Is it something that lifts you up and spurs you on, or is it not really a factor?
Oh, it's absolutely huge. I think it was integral, especially in the times when you're not doing well. Like when you feel like giving up, when you've got your latest rejection and you want to crawl in a corner and rock, those are the times when it's really important to have that support. I mean, it's fabulous. It's easy to celebrate people when they're doing well. It's harder to pump them up when they're not. So I think, and also it's inspiring to see when other people are making, short lists and things like that.
Yeah.
It can cut a little bit when you're not quite making them and you think, God, this is never going to happen for me. So there is that sort of dual conflict, I guess, where you're thinking you're really happy for them, but you're a little bit disappointed for yourself. But I think it's almost like a writing group. You can say things that are in the cone, like you can vent, you can swear, we can pretend that we're going to hire a bus and egg somebody's house, who was mean to us. You can just get all of that out, and it's a safe space. But also people in our writers group have read opening chapters for me. They've given feedback. They understand the writing process. They understand how long and hard a marathon it is. And also I was part of a children's writers group. So originally I was trying to write, obviously, the board books, and then I was trying to write a young chapter series about strange phobias, because I do not like eggs. And someone said to me, that's not just an aversion to eggs, you have a phobia. I don't like touching them. I don't like the smell of them. I have a 16-year-old who has to cook 75 eggs every day, and I have to leave the kitchen because I cannot be around the smell. I don't even like, we used to have chickens, and, collecting the chicken eggs when they're hot. Oh God, no. So I had thought about writing a chapter series because there is a name for a fear of eggs and it's called ovophobia. And I thought that would be a funny chapter book series. So that I joined a writers group and was trying to get that off the ground, never quite got off the ground. But hey, publishers, if you're listening, it's a brilliant idea.
Ovophobia, you heard it here first.
It's called the Phobia Files, and we can have many, many different, there's so many weird phobias, like fear of fluff is a phobia. Anyway, so I was in this writers group and I got contacted by a commissioning editor from Pan Macmillan on LinkedIn. I was writing articles at the time, parenting articles, and she contacted me and said, I've read one of your articles and I think you would have a good voice for women's fiction. Do you have any gems lying in your bottom drawer? And so I went to the children's group and thought, oh, should I say something to them? It's not really about children's literature. And so I thought, oh, maybe I'll just say it, in the round table of what's going on in your life. And they all kind of looked at me and yelled like, oh my God, Kylie, no one ever does this. Like, that's like being a waitress in a cafe in New York and someone saying you can come and play the part in a movie. Just tell her you've got something. So I had this idea for this book for ages, but I'd never written, a long form book. I didn't know how to write a novel. So I went home and I wrote 2 synopses. One was a funny one about a woman who enters 25-word or less competitions, which may or may not have been slightly autobiographical. And the other one was this one. And she said, the funny one sounds funny, but funny doesn't sell. The other one is really interesting. Send me your first 20,000 words, which I did not have. So then I went home and sat in my shared office with my husband, and he, who works in IT, said to me, just start from the start. Like, thanks. Thank you, computer man, for your advice.
Thank you very much.
That's great. So I nearly killed myself trying to write the first 20,000 words. And then she went on maternity leave and I wanted to cry because I thought she's never going to come back from maternity leave. She will never remember who I am. Someone suggested that I send her a little, how you can get bouquets with like rolled up cloth nappies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen them for new mums?
Yeah. Someone
said, send her one of those and just roll up your manuscript and stick it in.
Oh, God.
I was tempted, but I didn't. Anyway, she came back from maternity leave and I waited maybe 6 hours and then I emailed her and said, hi, do you remember me? And anyway, she took my first 20,000 words to something called an acquisitions meeting. Mm-hmm. And I totally thought, this is my big break. Look at me. Like, I've written 20,000 words and now I'm going to get a book deal. And I so did not get a book deal. And so
I'm not
I cried.
Laughing at you. I'm laughing with you.
Yes, we all feel the pain.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was good that it got to acquisitions because many don't, but it really got kicked in the guts down there. And then that kind of contact went silent and there was nothing. So then I just was determined to write this book to the end and see what I could do. So I ended up doing a mentorship with Catherine Hayman. That was a 6-month mentorship. And that was really good. That helped me write the book to the end. And then it was on me to fix it.
Now, we talked a little bit before about, being in a supportive community and about people being mean, which made me think about reviews. And I know you've had some reviews of your book so far. I've never done this before, but I want to talk to you a little bit about being a debut author and about the impact reviews have on you as a debut author. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
I certainly can. Look, I have been warned by every author and publisher I've come in contact with. My agent has actually written a whole section in a publicity schedule about stay off Goodreads. It is not for authors. It is for readers. Yeah. But come on, who's doing that? I've put something out into the world. I completely understand you cannot write a book for everyone. Just like art, movies, music, there is no one song or movie or piece of art that every single person is going to love. That's ridiculous. But I also, I don't know, I am very appreciative of people who read it and give reviews. And I would like every review to be a 5-star review because that is my personality. And, I told my mum I got a 3-star review and I wasn't happy about it. And she's like, I would be very happy with a 3-star review. It's just different personalities. 1-star reviews, I think if you're a very successful, advanced author making a living out of it, then a 1-star review makes no difference to your life, and you can laugh it off like Sally Hepworth does, and that's great. I'm okay with a 1-star review if they just kind of say it's not for me, and that's cool, or they thought it was something else that it wasn't and they were disappointed. That's okay. I really question the motivation behind people who leave nasty reviews that get stuck into the author or the process, or that feels super unnecessary to me. I mean, I have conversations with my children about, being kind, and you can be honest, but you can be nice about it. Like, you don't have to. And also I did, I've done a university course, not quite finished yet, in professional writing and editing at RMIT in Melbourne. And part of the course is to edit other writers' work and critique it. And we are taught how to do that constructively. And I am totally open to honest feedback of my writing, because that's what makes it better. But once it's a published piece, I can't change it. It's out into the world. As my publicist said, you've written a book you're proud of. Just let it go then. Let it go. I am not a let it go kind of person, right? I will hang on to this for like the next 10 years. I am trying really hard not to let it get me down. But I think you really have to question the ethics of reviews if the intention behind it is to just slag somebody off. I don't see the point of that. I think it's a very narrow-minded way to view the world, because if these are aspiring authors themselves and they have a history of slagging other authors off, I just don't know how that's going to serve you well in the long run. I'm not saying people can't give honest reviews. That's absolutely fine. We all think differently. We need diversity in literature. We need people to challenge different sets of books. Shakespeare's got 1-star reviews. It's fine. It's just not okay to me to be nasty about it, because there is a person behind the book. I am a human being. I have feelings. Writers we are sensitive people because we have to be, because that's how we tap into emotion. But we are also very hardy people. I mean, my book has been rejected many times, and some of those rejections were also quite mean. So we are tough people. And every time you send your book to an editor, then you're getting a report about basically all the things that are wrong with it. So we are used to this, but most people do it in a professional way. And I think there should be a professional standard. And I think people who just jump on Goodreads to, I don't know, troll, is that what they do? Like, what benefit are you getting out of that? I just don't know what serves that purpose. And as a debut author, it is hurtful. And I'm sure by the time my 10th book comes out and I sign my movie deal with Nicole Kidman, I will be laughing about this. But until we get there, I mean, my husband actually, because he knows my personality very well, has now blocked Goodreads on the server, so I don't get on there. So, yeah, I think maybe I'm very thankful for book reviewers. It's a really important part of the process. And I'm thankful that people give up their time to read a book. But also, these people often get the books for free. I understand when you pay $30 for a book and you hate the book, and that's annoying and frustrating. But, that's art. Like, maybe it's not for you. That's cool. Just donate it to the op shop and maybe someone else will get joy out of it. It's just the meanness I am not on board with. So I would hope that if reviewers are listening, I think most reviewers are nice and kind and constructive. And even if you don't want to be nice and kind, you can just be constructive, and that's cool. Or maybe just don't leave a review. Just say, I hated that book. I'm like recycling it or putting it in there, making a bonfire with all the other books I hate. I don't know. It's a really tricky area, and I'm trying not to be that, Suki Lala, needy, high maintenance author. But I did message my publicist and my agent, who both yelled at me and said, get off, stop reading it. It's not for you. We've told you.
Yeah.
It's
a tricky line to walk, I think. And I also feel like you, I think there's no need to be mean about it. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly okay not to like a book. You just don't need to make it your mission to let everybody else know that you didn't like the book.
Yeah, I mean, vote with your feet. Just don't go back. Like, maybe when my second book comes out, you think, nah, hated her first book, not giving the second book a go, even though it's a completely different story. Let's be kind.
Let's be kind. Let's be kind,
Claudine.
people. Yes. And I will tell you, Kylie, that most of the people that listen to this podcast are indeed very kind souls.
I know. The Australian writing community is phenomenal, and reading community. They are hugely supportive for the most part.
Talking about your second book, Kylie, you've already submitted that and you're working on something else, or what's happening?
It's submitted, but it will require some structural edits. It's currently called One Night Alone. It's about Gracie, who's a new mother. She's got an 8-month-old son and she's not coping that well. She decides she just wants one night off, just by herself in a hotel room, to just not have any responsibility for one night and get some sleep, because her child does not sleep. Also slightly autobiographical. All 4 of my children were sleep resistant. They sleep now, though, the teenagers. Oh, yeah.
I bet they do.
Yeah, they sleep now. So Gracie has her one night in a hotel, but she wakes up in someone else's room and does not remember how she got there.
Wow.
And as she sneaks out of the room, she sees across the way a woman being assaulted. And she can't report it because then she has to say she was in somebody else's room. And so she just doesn't. And that lady goes missing, is reported missing. So it's the ethical dilemma of honesty and truth, and many lies for Gracie. So Gracie is currently sitting with my publisher, and it needs some work, and I don't quite know how to fix it yet. So, but we will get there. That is the process of editing.
So Kylie, if readers wanted to find out more about you and your books, how can they do that?
I have a website, kylieorr.com, but that's just basic information. I'm not great at updating information. I am most active on Instagram. I try to get on Instagram every day. I am hopeless at Facebook. I don't love it, and I don't really understand it. I actually went on to Jodie Gibson, another one of our friends, writerly friends, and she started a Thursday morning write club. And so I went to her Facebook profile, I think it's called, and was waiting at 10 o'clock to jump on, and then there's nothing. So I sent her a message and said, I don't understand. How do I get on? And she's like, that's my profile. You have to go to my page. I did not know they were two separate things. That's why my husband works in IT. I have completely outsourced technology to him. I don't do technology. I mean, obviously I can write and I can work a computer, but I'm not great at Facebook. And Twitter, I do go on. Again, I'm not great at Twitter. I tend to just rant about reality TV shows and then I get off. So I would say follow me on Instagram is probably your best bet.
Unless you're a maths fan and you want Kylie's updates on maths.
Yeah, I have gone through and deleted some of those in light of being a newly published author and with the policy of let's be kind. I had to go through and delete some of those because maybe I wasn't so kind to myself.
Oh, dear.
Anyway, I can't remember who half the people are on maths. You know, when you watch it and you're completely obsessed. Do you watch it?
Well, I have to confess to sort of being an adjacent viewer of late.
I clear the house when I watch it because everyone's like, this is the worst show on TV. And I'm like, I know, but it's how I unwind because I don't have to use my brain. I just have to watch and abuse people from afar, sometimes on Twitter, and then you go and delete it because that's unkind. Yep.
Oh, I love it. Kylie, what fun it's been to chat with you about this fabulous new book. I wish you every success with someone else's child and the books that are surely to follow. Congratulations once more, my friend, and thank you for joining me on Talking Aussie Books today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved it. It's been fun.
Been great.
Thank you for being nice to me.
That's a wrap, folks. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, please drop me a line via my webpage at claudinetinellis.com, via Instagram, Facebook or Twitter. Alternatively, consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or Google Podcasts. Until next time, happy reading.